This video will show you how to collect carcasses and gather valuable samples to aid in wildlife health surveillance. Even just a few dead animals may be the sign of a disease outbreak, and it is important to gather information to understand the cause and potential consequences of the outbreak. Outbreaks of disease in wildlife may be a concern for domestic animals, people, and for wildlife populations. Detecting disease early in wildlife may help prevent the spread of a pathogen to livestock or people in the area, or help to identify something in the environment, such as a poison, that could put livestock or people at risk. Every carcass, regardless of its state of decomposition, can provide valuable data. While collecting information and samples, your primary goal should be cleanliness and safety. Collecting samples in a clean manner facilitates proper diagnostics and minimizes both sample contamination and personal exposure. Before approaching a sick or dead animal, protect yourself first. All team members must wear personal protective equipment when approaching a sick or dead animal. This may include gloves, a face mask, eye protection, and designated clothing. After putting on your PPE, you are ready to assess the surrounding environment before approaching the animal. Collect as much information about the situation as you can, including the species involved, number of sick or dead animals, and any clinical signs observed. Also include external or environmental observations, such as recent unusual events or any reports of illness in nearby animals or people. Record all of the information you gather on the morbidity and mortality event form. If you see a cow or antelope species with signs of a swollen neck, arched back, or blood coming out of its nose, mouth, or rectum, stop and inform your supervisor immediately. Do not touch the carcass. These could be signs of anthrax, a bacterial pathogen that can be deadly to people. Now you are ready to approach the animal. Record the GPS coordinates, carcass condition, if the animal is dead, and take photos. Include pictures and videos of the sick or dead animals and of the landscape or nearby facilities. Document the sampling procedure itself with as many pictures and notes as possible. Photographs are extremely important and provide valuable information. Information, pictures, and GPS coordinates may also be submitted directly using Smart Mobile if available. You are now ready to begin collecting samples. Make sure you designate one person for collecting samples and one person for documenting information. Both of them must wear PPE. The person documenting information should remain clean at all times. Carcass collection. If the carcass is small enough to fit in the carcass collection bag and can be easily carried, collect the whole carcass. To collect the carcass, invert a large plastic bag over your hand. Grasp the carcass and fold the bag over the carcass. Roll the bag away from your body on the ground to expel the air and seal the bag. Your gloved hands should not touch the carcass at any point in this procedure. All carcasses must be bagged individually. Place the individually bagged animal into a second plastic bag and seal it in the same fashion. Place the second bag into a third bag. Place the completed wildlife morbidity and mortality event form into the third bag and seal the bag closed. If the animal is larger than the carcass collection bag or too heavy to carry or cannot be legally transported, collect samples instead. Swabbing. All of the necessary materials should be present in your field sampling kit. Swabs come in sterile packaging and should be kept sterile before and after sampling. This means the cotton tip should not be touched with your hands at any time, even with gloves. To collect an oral swab sample, remove the swab from its packaging without touching the cotton tip, and rub the cotton tip against the back of the animal's throat. Place the swab into a cryovial labeled O, and break or cut the end of the swab off into the vial. Close the vial carefully and put it back into the sampling kit. To collect a rectal or cloacal sample, remove the swab from its packaging without touching the cotton tip and insert it into the animal's rectum or cloaca. Place the swab into a cryovial labeled R and break or cut the end of the swab off into the vial. Close the vial carefully and put it back into the sampling kit. If poisoning is suspected, collect nearby water, bait, or food in a large blue tube for additional testing. After you have collected your samples, be sure to properly dispose of your protective equipment and get instructions from your supervisor about carcass disposal. Put all your samples in a designated cold box, fridge, or freezer as soon as possible after collection, and inform your focal point for wildlife health surveillance. Do not store samples in proximity to food items. Samples and carcasses must be submitted to the laboratory as soon as possible after arriving to the station. In case of a delay, keep the samples and carcasses on ice, making sure that the ice is changed regularly and that any meltwater does not damage the samples. All right, let's review. Remember to protect yourself and others by wearing proper personal protective equipment at all times. Assess the surrounding environment before approaching the animal. Gather and record as much information as possible. Take photos and make sure the morbidity and mortality event form is complete, or enter the information into Smart Mobile if available. Collect the carcass or oral or rectal swabs safely. Dispose of your protective equipment according to instructions given from your supervisor. Put the samples or carcass in a designated cooler as soon as possible to be stored while they await shipment to the laboratory. You have now learned how to collect carcasses and gather valuable samples. Thank you for your help in wildlife health surveillance.